Welcome to the Team Teach podcast. I'm Clare, and in each episode you'll find me talking with an expert guest to learn more about behaviour. We squeeze a lot into each episode. You'll listen to the latest thinking in behaviour, continue your professional development with our book recommendation, and then I'll send you away with 3 practical tips you can use in your setting. I'm joined today by Saffron Hill. Saffron is the founder and director of Children of a Revolution, a non-profit community interest company that uses art to aid the well-being of those living within marginalised groups. Saffron also is the founder and director of Hear It Firsthand, a training and consultancy service that uses lived experiences to improve children and family services. Saffron also works within a children's residential home as a senior practitioner. And today, Saffron and I are talking about using art to help those facing adverse childhood experiences. Enjoy the episode. Hi, Saffron. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks. Are you?
I'm all right. It's really good to have you on the podcast today. It's a different topic, actually. It's one that we haven't covered on the podcast before. And we're looking at creative approaches in supporting children and young people who have had adverse childhood experiences. Some of my colleagues joke with me about the catchy titles that I come up with. Maybe that was a bit long. However, I think it works. We always start the podcast with a reflective question, which is what you wished you knew then that you know now about our topic.
I wish I knew that creative art wasn't something that you had to be good at.
Mm-hmm.
I realised that you could just do art and you could just write poetry just for the sake of doing it because it's a natural behaviour and not something that we should judge.
And you find that people judge those things quite a bit, right? So I used to teach English, and some of the young people that I worked with would be very judgmental about their own work. And it was really hard to explain. And it always sounds naff, doesn't it? Of being like, yeah, but it's the process. It's the doing that's the enjoyable bit. Because people like results, don't they?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. People like to see what the masterpiece is at the end, but you know, we do these things every day when we're singing in the shower or we're dancing when we're tidying up. It's just creativity is instilled within you. It's not something that we've learned to do.
It's within us. I love that. I have so much creativity. So we're going to have a right blast, Saffron, talking about this today. Would you mind telling the listener a bit about your experience with the topic?
Yeah, so I was using poetry as an outlet throughout my teen years, really. I'd just write here and there. I've never really painted or drew much. I wasn't really a drawer. I love writing, and I used poetry to express myself, to get things off my mind that I might have been going through. And it was when I was about 21 that I finally entered one of my poems into an exhibition about recovery. I think what clicked for me was having my work up and seeing people standing in front of it and discussing it and having a conversation about it and thinking, you know, I didn't have to come from a background of being a graduate in art to be able to have people understand you on a level. And to be listened to. It was nice seeing people standing there and, you know, talking to me about it, and it sort of opened me up and allowed me to have a new perspective on my own trauma. And it also unlocked something for me where I thought anything bad that happened in life, I started getting a perception of, oh, what can I create out of this? Rather than being upset about it.
So channeling it into a creative process, I suppose.
Yeah, I started getting this yin-yang mindset where it's like, you know, you have to have the bad stuff to get the good stuff. And I got quite obsessed with it. I started thinking, does creativity, like, is it fueled by happiness, by unhappiness? I was thinking, do you have to go through these bad things to be able to create something good out of it? And I started sort of looking more into the idea, and the more I've researched into it and, you know, spoke about it with people, I've realised you kind of have to go through some sort of badness to be able to create something.
To get the feelings out through that creative process, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're so
like,
passionate about it, Saffron. I love it. You're so passionate.
I think, you know, if someone told a joke and you was unable to laugh, if somebody was to, I don't know, you watched a sad film and you wasn't able to cry, it's expression, isn't it? If you hear music and you start tapping your foot, it's just one of those things. You have to express yourself.
You have to. And I'm also wondering how, through the work that you do with children and young people, how you use that passion that you have for helping those individuals that have had, I'm not going to call them difficult experiences, I think that really minimizes it, to have adverse childhood experiences in various forms. How do you channel it? How do you use it?
So my first understanding of it, I was working as a volunteer behaviour mentor. It was in a pupil referral unit, and there was a young girl in there who didn't really want to speak to anybody. She was very, let's say, verbally abusive towards people, and it took me a couple of weeks
expressive.
to be able to, yeah, expressive, let's use that. Yeah, and she wouldn't say anything to me. She would just always say something quite negative to people, and it was only a couple of weeks in that I took my guitar in, and that was it. That was the click with her. She was like, so how do I do a chord? And I showed her one, and then she wanted to know the next one and the next one. And a couple of weeks later, she showed me a song that she learned. So that was my first experience of it. And then more recently, another example is a young person in a home I was working with, and he would graffiti on his wall all the time. And some of the staff would get quite annoyed, you know, he keeps drawing on the walls and we've just painted them. And so I was working with a colleague of mine where we said, let him do it and then recreate it into a massive art piece. It actually stopped him damaging his walls. He'd sometimes go up there and he'd either draw stuff on them or he'd go and physically damage them, like kicking holes in them and stuff. And when we'd done the artwork and recreated what he drew, but in a more artsy way, he never did it again to his bedroom.
Oh, that's so amazing, isn't it? But I think you said it when you were describing how you used art, and how when people were talking about it, that you felt, I think you said, I felt understood and heard. I think you might have said as well, I might be wrong, but I'm just wondering if that's similar for that boy, where if you're recreating like his art in a different place and it looks amazing, like that's the ultimate of being heard and being understood through that creative process.
I'm giving you an element of control. It definitely gives you control over how you feel about things, and you can't, it's not subjective, is it? Art isn't subjective, neither's music or dancing. You just do it, and it's not for anybody else. If somebody gets it, that's fine, but if they don't, they don't. But it's your thing, so you've got pure control over it.
It's totally yours, and you can rub it out, start again, do it differently, add different bits, continually ever evolving. Although I'm wondering, I mean, I'd get really frustrated. I'd always feel like something wasn't finished. I mean, that's maybe my personality. I'd be like, oh, it's not quite right. But maybe there isn't an end point. I don't know.
I don't think there is. Like, I think it is actually the process. I can't tell you how many times I've been painting and it hasn't gone how I've wanted to, so I've just got the paintbrush and gone just, you know, covered the whole thing. But you know, you create a blank canvas for yourself again, don't you?
You do, yeah. And you kind of start again. But it's amazing, those stories where you've connected with children and young people through those creative processes. And I'm also wondering how kind of through the process that helps our children that have had those adverse childhood experiences. You've kind of talked about how it helped you personally with trauma. You've sort of mentioned that. Yeah, but I'm just wondering a bit more about maybe why that process helps so much.
It's expression. I think if we concentrated more on calling art expression, we wouldn't look
Mm.
down so much on art. Or let's not say art, let's say creativity. Because like I say, we hear a lot, I can't draw, I can't do this, I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about that, it's about expressing. I've read recently, I read a study and it had said 17 out of 20 poets had come from homes where as children they saw tense psychological dramas played out by their parents.
Oh,
And
that's
it was the
interesting.
same sort of thing for actors, comedians, singers, writers. Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of people doing it, using dark humour to sort of get over their own experiences.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah,
They will
for
be
sure.
the comedians and singers. I mean, look at people like Adele who are singing songs about heartbreak. Could she write it if she didn't experience it?
Mm-hmm.
I suppose it gives you, like I say, it gives a new perspective on your
Mm-hmm.
situation rather than looking at it as such a bad thing.
Yeah, and that new perspective for the children and young people that we work with is so important. I know in one of the services I work in, we're very lucky to have access to music therapy. Not as staff. Well, that would be lovely if I had access to it as a staff member, but I mean the students or the young people, and the impact that the young people doing music therapy, and just even things like them working as a team together creatively to write songs, like the difference. I'm not saying that that one intervention is changed the whole kind of outlook of those students, because that's pretty unrealistic, but it's definitely made an impact, and you can kind of see just in their enjoyment that it's really changed them. And one thing that the services have also done is that they just bought some secondhand instruments that we have in a breakout space, and then at break time and lunch times, people just crack on the old Casio keyboard. And like some of the stuff that the kids do, it's just, I almost feel like weeping, because it's a provision for autistic individuals. And some have also had a lot of adverse childhood experiences and various things. But just the freedom of expression, I think that word expression that you said so right, it's just amazing. I do feel like weeping when someone's just having a good old sing song. And I think some of the individuals I work with have less awareness of their peers and less anxiety, sometimes, not always, sometimes, about expressing themselves, and don't really care what other people think. And it's so beautiful to watch, of just someone just truly expressing themselves, in a very unique way. I love it. I'm just like, yes, I love this.
Everyone's got their own little style, haven't they, of how they do everything. I
Yeah.
think you connect with a person that way. I was saying to somebody the other day, I said, I think it's funny how, we judge other people singing and say whether it's good or not, but it's such a natural thing to do, even humming along to music or something.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't do it to a bird. If a bird was singing, and we wouldn't be like, oh, their pitch is off, oh, their time's terrible. Like, it's such a natural thing to do, and I think it just should be encouraged more.
In that non-judgmental way as well. Is, again, it's going back to what you said at the start, that it's not the product at the end, it's the process of enjoyment. And for me, I mean, I wouldn't describe myself as someone that sings particularly in tune, but I do quite enjoy it. And actually, I wouldn't say I'm the best dancer, but I enjoy expressing myself and bopping along. But it's your perception, isn't it, of how other people kind of judge you for it. Did you know that you can become a trainer and deliver Team Teach training to staff within your own organisation? Have the flexibility to choose when, where and who you deliver your training to throughout the year. Find out more about this cost-effective option on the Team Teach website. I suppose, Saffron, I'm also thinking about services and kind of ways to get more should we call it expressive rather than art? Let's go expressive now, but more creative expression in services. I know you've mentioned working in children's homes. What are some kind of ways that staff can like get it in there a bit more?
I actually went along to a conference called Article 31 in Glasgow.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're trying to do in Scotland is there's 9 quality standards in a children's home. It's stuff like health and wellbeing, education,
Mm-hmm.
protection. They're trying to make art one of those things, one of the standards. So I think what they're trying to do at the moment is look at the journey of how they're going to make sure it's known as important. So I think that was the first thing we was looking at, is giving it
Mm-hmm.
a different name, like we said, expression earlier, rather than
Mm-hmm.
creativity, because otherwise people don't take it as seriously.
Yeah.
But I think it's just about being more imaginative with the activities that we do. I know that a lot of time we can go out bowling, we'll go out to the cinema. They're very nice activities, but when you're working with traumatized young people, where is that going? If
Mm-hmm.
if they're not expressing anything they've been through in any way, it just stores up in their body. And this is sort of, if we look more into ACEs, how it can impact
Mm-hmm.
them in adulthood. They go through all of their time not expressing themselves in any sort of way, and then will grow up to face the physical implications of not
Mm-hmm.
expressing it. I think if more people knew how important it was to let things out and not store trauma up, then we'd do more. It could be things like even looking at things out in the local community, taking them along to a studio for the day, spending more money on creative resources as well. Um, what would hurt putting in a bit more a budget for £10 extra a week to get some more creative materials.
Yeah, and I think it's so pertinent what you said, Saffron, there about trauma kind of being stored up, and the things that you're mentioning, that expression, are ways to process trauma, but perhaps in a safe and hopefully boundaried way, in the service where staff and the child and young person is safe through that process. There's lots written on it. I love to go back to a bit of evidence, as you did with Dr. Bruce Perry writes about using music and particular sounds to help process trauma, and the boy raised by wolves. And there's other bits written as well where there's a whole book, The Body Keeps the Score, about how trauma stays in the body. I'm doing a classic thing where I can't remember the author, but hopefully that's enough for someone to reference The Body Keeps the Score. And so the bits that you're talking about is so well documented, but it's interesting that there's a lobby to kind of get it, to get it recognized almost, where we know the evidence is written down, it's published quite extensively now. It's not just, a small faction of society going, oh, we think this. It's actually widely written about in best-selling books, and kind of neuroscience helps us to understand that. So I've gone off on a rant, Saffron. We have to stop me, because I'm meant to be interviewing you, and I'm guilty of like ranting. But it makes me a bit like this should be, kind
We
of
raise
really
a lot of awareness, don't we? But we don't action things a lot of the time.
yeah. I know, I was just going to say, Saffron, I think the things that you've suggested, like just £10, like buying a few extra resources, just thinking outside the box a little bit with some of the sessions that you might have planned, with your young people. It's not a
We're
lot.
so scared, aren't we, to connect with our inner child
Yeah.
and to be professional in the setting. I think that's what it is. And I think people are worried to put their own ideas forward.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of money on things like TVs, and I just don't see what it does for people's brains if we don't invest more in these things.
Well, yeah, I think yeah, there's so much to be said for it. But I can't believe it. I've just checked my time, and I was like, oh my gosh, like 20 minutes have gone. So I just want to leave enough time that we've got our top tips to kind of sum up the episode with, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so my one tip was, I've got it written down here. I put dancing, singing, painting, and writing art skill sets. They're natural human behaviours. Do we judge a bird song? No, we just listen. Creativity isn't a matter of opinion. Everything you do is a reflection of your mind. A society created judging and standard. They didn't create dancing and singing. We just did it when we felt like it. Second one was, try not to see creativity as art, try and call it expression. Then you might understand the importance of it. Imagine if someone told a joke and you could never laugh, if you stepped on a plug and you couldn't say ouch. Where does all that emotion go? You hear a beat and you tap your foot, you hear a song and you hum along. Imagine if we were unable to express, and why is it not important to people?
I love that. And what made that even more of an impact on me, Saffron, is that your camera zoomed in on your cat just behind you as you were speaking, and I was like, ah.
Charlie thinks the same.
He agreed. Yeah, he was nodding along. Yeah.
My third top tip was, you are creative. Everything you do is art, from how you style your hair to how you furnish your home, the way you cook your food and make your bed. Everything you see is a creation. Buildings, signs, leaflets, gardens, shoes, books and cars. Yet people will still ask if they're creative and respond that they can't draw.
So amazing, Saffron. I love those. And there's so many ways that hopefully the listener can express their kind of creativity, but also help the children and young people that they work with to express. And I think there's so much more that I'm sure that we could cover. But yeah, it's been a really great episode. Thank you so much for your time.
That's okay. I've loved it. It's been good.
You've been listening to the Team Teach podcast. It's been great to have you here with us as we discuss behaviour, communication, and the ways we can best support those in our care. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.